Over the past few weeks, many farm owners have repeatedly spotted foxes around their livestock areas. They often move along fences, cross open fields, or quietly approach poultry coops in the early morning and late afternoon. At first, residents only saw a few animals from time to time and assumed it was normal wildlife activity. However, the number of sightings quickly began to rise. Around the same time, many families started noticing that chickens, ducks, and other small animals were disappearing without any clear signs. Some people even saw foxes carrying prey across the fields before vanishing into the edge of the woods. These repeated incidents made the community realize this was no longer an isolated problem. Not long afterward, the foxes began expanding their range beyond the livestock areas. They were seen near sheds, gardens, feed storage areas, and roads running through nearby neighborhoods. Some even came close to homes at night in search of food scraps or pet food. Their quiet movements allowed them to reach places that often went unnoticed. The growing number of sightings suggested that the foxes had learned where reliable food sources were located and were becoming more comfortable around human activity. This increased the risk of repeated visits, especially on farms with weak fencing or poultry coops located close to wooded areas.
I think we've got some roosters.
In response, farm owners began surveying the entire area to identify the routes the foxes used most often. They checked gaps beneath fences, narrow trails through tall grass, areas near water sources, and paths connecting the woods to open farmland. Once the likely travel routes were identified, a trapping system was set up in several locations. Some traps were placed near poultry coops, while others were positioned along fences and at the edges of fields. Bait was placed inside to encourage the foxes to approach, but every location had to be chosen carefully to avoid making them suspicious. During the first few days, not every trap produced results. Some foxes came close, stopped to sniff the area, and then turned away. Animals that had already traveled around the farm several times appeared highly sensitive to even small changes in their surroundings. Because of this, farmers had to check the cameras regularly, study the direction of travel, and adjust the trap locations. Some traps were moved to narrower paths where the foxes had to pass close to the fence. Others were carefully concealed with dry grass, branches, and materials already found in the area. The process required patience, because even an unfamiliar scent or an object placed unnaturally could keep a fox away for several days. After a period of monitoring and adjustment, the traps began to work more effectively. The first foxes were caught along routes leading directly toward the poultry coops. Whenever a trap was triggered, farmers quickly arrived to inspect the situation, handle it, and reset the equipment. Regular checks helped reduce the amount of time an animal remained in the trap and ensured the system was always ready to operate. Camera footage also showed that not every fox used the same path. Some traveled along the edges of the fields, while others circled behind sheds or approached from the rear of the livestock area. As a result, the control zone was gradually expanded. After several weeks of continued control efforts, fox activity around the farms dropped significantly. Even so, the animals did not disappear completely because the surrounding area still offered plenty of woodland, open grass, and natural food sources. New foxes could still move in from nearby areas and quickly locate the farms when conditions were favorable. For that reason, camera monitoring, fence inspections, and traps placed at key locations remained in use. For livestock owners, controlling fox activity was not a task that could be completed in just a few days, but a long-term process requiring regular observation, adjustment, and cooperation to protect animals from future intrusions.
With many poultry farms, foxes are not the largest predators, but they are the ones farmers are most wary of. They do not attack recklessly or rush straight toward their prey. Instead, they often spend days patiently observing before making their move. A tiny gap beneath a fence, a coop door that is not fully secured, or even a single night when the guard dog loses focus can turn an entire chicken coop into a regular target. The first signs are often subtle. A few chickens become unusually agitated at dawn. A patch of soil near the base of the fence appears lightly disturbed, and a few feathers are caught on the low bushes. At first, many people assume these are simply traces left by rats, stray cats, or an animal passing through. But as more and more poultry begin to disappear, suspicion gradually turns toward the fox. Night vision cameras are discreetly installed around the coop. Before long, the footage captures a small reddish-brown figure quietly emerging at the edge of the yard, moving slowly and pausing repeatedly as though memorizing every shadow and corner. What catches the wildlife control team's attention is that the fox never acts impulsively. It circles the area, sniffs the ground, checks the direction of the wind, and then disappears into the trees behind the property. Over the following nights, it returns at almost exactly the same time. Each visit brings it a little closer, as it tests a different approach, yet it consistently avoids brightly lit open spaces. Its careful movements reveal that this is not a predator wandering by chance, but a fox that has already begun treating the farm as part of its regular feeding territory. Rather than reacting hastily, the wildlife control team decides to continue monitoring the fox to better understand its habits. They mark the locations it frequently passes, from a narrow trail beside the bushes to the soft ground behind the coop. After several nights of observation, a familiar route gradually becomes clear. The fox rarely changes its pace, except on nights of heavy rain or when the wind shifts direction. That consistent pattern ultimately becomes the key to the entire plan. When the right moment arrives, a steel foothold trap is carefully placed along the fox's regular route, in a location concealed well enough to preserve the area's natural appearance. Everything nearby is left almost completely untouched. The dry leaves remain largely undisturbed. The grass along the trail lies in its original direction, and every effort is made to minimize unfamiliar scents. For an animal as cunning as a fox, a trap must not only be positioned correctly, but also blend seamlessly into its surroundings so that it senses no danger. Even the slightest irregularity could cause it to abandon its familiar route and disappear for days. The nights that follow become a true battle of wits. The cameras record the fox approaching the trap site again and again, only to stop and linger for long periods. Sometimes it simply stands motionless, ears raised, nose constantly testing the air. At other times, it circles around as if checking whether its familiar path is still safe. No one rushes to make adjustments, knowing that even the smallest change could force the entire process to start over. Finally, on a cold morning while dew still clings to the grass, the cameras signal unusual movement. After days of careful investigation, the fox steps into the trap. It is not caught through luck, but through patiently reading the signs, understanding its habits, and respecting the animal's natural caution. Afterward, the poultry enclosure is reinforced more securely, leftover feed is cleaned up, and the gaps beneath the fences are sealed to prevent other foxes from returning. This story of trapping a fox shows that protecting livestock is about far more than setting a trap or building a stronger fence. More importantly, it requires the ability to recognize the smallest clues that nature leaves behind. Foxes are intelligent, patient, and always ready to take advantage of human mistakes. To deal with them effectively, farmers must possess the same patience. In this silent contest, victory belongs not to the stronger side, but to the one that understands the terrain, the timing, and every movement made under cover of darkness.
It all began when the farm owner noticed that the chickens were behaving strangely day after day. They often crowded into one corner of the coop, constantly making noise and refusing to settle down as they normally did. A few birds disappeared even though the coop door remained closed, the fence showed no visible damage, and only a few unclear tracks could be found on the ground. At first, the farmer assumed that the missing chickens might have slipped through a small opening somewhere. However, when the same problem continued for several nights in a row, he realized that a small, fast, and highly cautious predator was quietly approaching the farm.
I can't throw this over the fence because this is... They'll spread this all around.
Instead of immediately setting traps, the farmer installed several infrared cameras around the chicken coop to monitor the predator's activity. Feathers scattered near the fence and flattened grass along the edge of the woods gradually revealed the direction it was using to travel. Only a few days later, the cameras recorded foxes frequently appearing around the farm. They never walked directly toward the coop but circled the area several times, stopped to observe, and only then carefully searched for a way to approach. Each time they returned, they changed their route again, showing how alert they were and how they avoided using the same entrance repeatedly. After several days of monitoring, the cameras finally captured clear footage of the foxes appearing near the chicken coop at almost the same hours each night. They slowly moved closer to the flock, then suddenly rushed forward, grabbed one chicken tightly, and dragged it away from the coop. On one occasion, a fox even returned a second time to attack another bird before quickly retreating along the same route it had used earlier. The footage showed that the predator not only approached with extreme caution but also struck with remarkable speed. The farmer understood that unless he blocked the exact routes the foxes were using, the losses would continue. Once the regular travel route had been identified, the farmer began installing the first trap at a location the fox frequently crossed. The trapping system was placed beneath an area of deeply loosened soil, then completely covered with dry grass and decaying leaves so that it blended naturally into the surroundings. Bait was positioned above the prepared area to encourage the fox to move farther into the trap zone. After several days of approaching cautiously and investigating the scent, the animal finally stepped onto the concealed section. The mechanism activated immediately, causing the surprised fox to fall and become trapped inside the prepared enclosure. After the first fox was caught, the cameras continued to record several other individuals appearing around the farm. The farmer therefore expanded the plan and installed additional traps along the narrow trails leading toward the chicken coop. Each location was covered with local soil, dry leaves, and nearby grass so that it matched the surrounding environment and did not alarm the remaining foxes. Over the following days, the animals gradually returned along their familiar routes and entered the prepared areas. The second trapping operation produced much greater results, with several foxes being caught, allowing the farmer to control most of the routes they had regularly used to approach the farm. However, the farmer understood that catching several foxes would only reduce the immediate threat. If the chicken coop continued to have the same weak points, other animals could eventually discover them and begin visiting the farm. Therefore, while continuing to monitor the cameras and maintain the trapping system, he also strengthened the entire poultry area. The coop door was fitted with a more secure locking mechanism, and leftover feed around the enclosure was removed every day. After some time, the cameras no longer recorded foxes moving close to the chicken coop. Although they occasionally appeared near the edge of the field, the animals only watched from a distance before quickly leaving when they could no longer find an easy route into the area. Predators such as foxes constantly observe, learn, and change their behavior in order to adapt to their surroundings. For that reason, farmers must continue monitoring their cameras, checking for newly formed travel routes, and removing any food sources that could attract wildlife. This proactive approach not only reduces immediate losses but also creates a more dependable and effective protection system over time. By understanding the natural behavior of wild animals and adjusting each strategy according to changing conditions, people can protect their livestock while still maintaining the necessary balance with the surrounding environment.
For several weeks, farmers in livestock raising areas began noticing that foxes were appearing more frequently than before. The animals moved quietly near chicken coops, crossed wide stretches of farmland, and approached the fences when few people were around. At first, sightings were rare, so no one considered them a serious warning sign. However, before long, the number of encounters increased rapidly, making it clear that these animals were gradually moving closer to residential areas. At the same time, many households repeatedly discovered that chickens and other small livestock had been attacked or had suddenly disappeared without any clear explanation. Some enclosures showed almost no signs of damage, making it difficult to determine how the foxes had entered. Several people even witnessed foxes carrying animals away from farms before quickly disappearing behind the trees. These repeated incidents made the local community realize that they were no longer dealing with a few accidental encounters. In response to the situation, farmers carefully examined the places where foxes frequently traveled and began installing traps. The main locations included narrow paths near fences, open areas along the forest edge, and routes leading directly into livestock enclosures. Bait was also placed at suitable points to further increase the chances of attracting the foxes. Instead of focusing only on the areas around chicken coops, the control zone was gradually expanded into the wide agricultural land surrounding the farms. The traps were not installed randomly or without a clear plan. Farmers carefully observed the foxes' movement routes, examined the terrain, and selected the locations where the animals were most likely to pass. After installation, every trap was checked frequently, and its position was changed if it failed to produce results after a certain period. This careful arrangement greatly helped maintain long-term effectiveness, instead of relying only on luck. Patience became an essential part of the control process. After a period of continuous observation, the first traps finally began producing results.
It changed into a trench set, and
Several foxes were caught along the main routes leading toward the livestock areas, exactly as local residents had predicted. Whenever a trap was triggered, farmers quickly reached the location, assessed the situation, handled it, and safely reset the equipment. Their rapid response prevented interruptions in the control effort and allowed them to continue managing other foxes still active in the area. Through regular inspections and constant adjustments to trap locations, the overall effectiveness of the control effort gradually improved. Places where foxes had previously appeared frequently became noticeably quieter, while the number of missing livestock cases also declined. However, farmers did not stop all their efforts after seeing the initial results. They understood that leaving some travel routes unmonitored or ending surveillance too early could allow the foxes to return and continue searching for food around the livestock enclosures. In reality, even after many foxes had been captured, some continued returning to residential areas near the farms. They cautiously approached gardens, storage buildings, and places where livestock feed was kept, then quickly moved away when they noticed people nearby. These repeated appearances clearly showed that the available food sources in the area were still attractive. Therefore, the trapping system remained active at several locations, while local residents continued to stay alert.
I know, you're not too thrilled.
As time passed, the number of foxes appearing around the livestock areas decreased considerably. However, they did not disappear completely because food remained plentiful and the environment was still favorable for their activity. In addition to the foxes already familiar with the terrain, new individuals sometimes arrive from surrounding areas, causing occasional sightings to continue. As a result, farmers still had to inspect the traps, observe travel routes, and quickly identify new areas of activity. For this reason, fox control did not end after only a few captures, but became a long-term and continuous monitoring process. Maintaining the traps, inspecting them frequently, and responding quickly help reduce the risk of foxes returning and attacking livestock again. For farms located near forests and agricultural land, taking preventive action remains extremely important for minimizing damage. If you found this content useful, leave a comment and continue following the channel. Recently, farmers have repeatedly spotted foxes around their livestock areas. They often move along fences, cross cultivated fields, or approach poultry pens very closely. At first, the sightings were scattered and did not cause much concern. However, within a short time, the number of encounters increased noticeably. Many farms began reporting chickens, ducks, and other small livestock disappearing under unusual circumstances. Some residents even witnessed foxes carrying away poultry before quickly leaving the area. This made farmers realize that the threat was becoming increasingly serious and that effective control measures were necessary. The foxes not only appear around farms, but also gradually expanded their range into nearby residential areas. Some individuals were seen in home gardens, storage sheds, or places where animal feed was kept. Others crossed small roads within residential neighborhoods before returning to agricultural land. Their presence in multiple locations increased local concern because livestock remained at risk of attack. Sightings also became more frequent than before, showing that the foxes had gradually adapted to living near human settlements. Faced with the situation, farmers decided to implement suitable control measures. After assessing the situation, the farmers began deploying trap systems at multiple locations to control fox activity. The traps were placed along routes frequently used by foxes, near fences, and in areas bordering the forest. Bait was also used to increase the likelihood of attracting the animals. Instead of placing traps only around livestock pens, the farmers expanded coverage to surrounding areas to improve effectiveness. After the traps were installed, they were inspected regularly, and their locations were adjusted whenever necessary to match changes in fox movement patterns. After some time, the first traps began producing results. Many foxes were gradually caught in locations that had been prepared in advance by the farmers. Most were captured along the routes commonly leading toward the livestock areas. After each successful capture, the farmers quickly reset the traps in the same positions to continue controlling other foxes still active in the area. The traps were checked every day so they could respond immediately whenever one was triggered. Through continuous operation, the trapping system steadily became much more effective at reducing fox activity. Although many foxes had already been captured, others continued returning to residential areas near the farms in search of food. Some appeared in gardens, storage sheds, or around places where livestock feed was stored. At times, residents spotted foxes moving right alongside fences before quickly disappearing. Their repeated returns showed that the available food sources in the area continued to attract them. Not only livestock farmers, but also many families living near cultivated fields frequently reported seeing foxes. As a result, local residents remained highly alert and actively protected both their animals and their homes. After several rounds of control efforts, the number of foxes appearing around residential areas decreased significantly, but did not disappear completely. Occasionally, a few individuals still returned to places where they had previously found food or traveled through the outskirts of nearby communities. Whenever foxes were detected, farmers immediately continued implementing control measures to prevent them from reaching livestock pens and domestic animals. By maintaining the trapping program over a long period, the frequency of fox sightings dropped substantially compared to before. Nevertheless, local residents remained cautious and stayed prepared in case the foxes returned again.
predators do not always reveal themselves directly to humans. Often, their presence is first indicated by small signs repeatedly appearing in the same place. At first, the farm owner only noticed that a few chickens had disappeared. He assumed it was accidental, but the flock continued shrinking each night. One morning, while checking the fence, he found several small tracks near the coop. The door was intact, the wire had not been visibly damaged, and no other suspicious clues appeared. Only after an infrared camera was installed did the culprit emerge. A red fox repeatedly tried to break through the wire and, after several attempts, slipped away with its prey. As forests shrink because of human activity and prey such as rabbits and small birds become scarcer, foxes are forced to expand their feeding range. Farms near woodland edges become attractive because chickens, ducks, rodents, fallen eggs, and food scraps are readily available. Reaching a poorly protected poultry coop requires far less energy than chasing wild prey. Foxes have good memories and quickly learn safe routes, periods when people are absent, and locations where food can be found. Once they discover a stable source, they return regularly, sometimes appearing more often or bringing their young. As the fox population increases, pressure on livestock areas also grows. Understanding the cause is still not enough, because many protective measures fail due to small mistakes. Farmers may reinforce coop doors, add fencing, or install overhead barriers to stop foxes from jumping inside. However, they often overlook gaps beneath the wire, soft ground that can be dug through, or openings hidden behind bushes. Motion lights and loud sounds may keep foxes away for several nights, but the effect rarely lasts. Once the animal realizes there is no real danger, it changes its schedule and returns when the farm is quieter. Another mistake is placing traps in open areas because they are easier to monitor. Foxes usually follow fences, ditches, narrow paths, and bushes for cover. As a result, the wrong animal, such as a cat, may be caught instead. To capture a fox successfully, the farmer must first understand its habits and use them to plan an effective response. Foxes usually travel alone, move quietly, and prefer routes with natural cover. Tracks for caught on wire, compressed soil, or a narrow passage through bushes can reveal a regular path. The trap must be placed directly along that route, not wherever it is most convenient for people. Eggs, meat, or food scraps may be used as bait, but location remains the deciding factor, such as a spot near a woodpile. When setting the trap, the surrounding leaves, dry grass, and soil should remain undisturbed. Chemical smells, clear footprints, and unusual changes must be avoided. Leaving the trap inactive for several days can also help the fox become familiar with it and lower its guard. Eventually, the trapping effort succeeded in catching a highly cautious red fox. Another effective option was a live capture steel cage. Because foxes are wary, cage traps rarely work immediately. The floor was covered with soft soil and dry leaves to hide the metallic smell, while the bait was placed deep inside. On the first night, the fox remained outside, repeatedly raising its head to listen before quietly leaving. On the second night, it came closer but still refused to cross the entrance. The farmer left the cage in place and limited his movement nearby so the area remained natural. Near dawn on the third day, the camera recorded the fox moving along the bushes, pausing at the entrance and slowly stepping inside. When its paw pressed the trigger plate, the steel door dropped instantly. The fox turned in panic, but could no longer escape.
Okay. Coming to get.
Once the immediate danger had been reduced, the next step was preventing the problem from returning. A secure farm cannot depend on traps alone. Food scraps should be removed, waste containers kept tightly closed, and poultry coops built with solid floors and deeply buried wire to prevent digging. Dense bushes close to the coop should be cleared, while motion lights and guard dogs should serve only as supporting measures. Any control method must follow local regulations and prioritize safe, humane practices. The most important lesson is that foxes do not appear by chance. They come because they have found an opportunity. What humans call stealing is simply the feeding instinct of an animal gradually losing its natural habitat. When farmers read the signs correctly, understand the cause, and improve their protection methods, losses will gradually decline and livestock management will become more stable. On farms located near forests or abandoned fields, foxes often appear without leaving many obvious signs behind. They are smaller than many other predators, but their keen observation skills and ability to remember the terrain make them a serious threat to poultry flocks. Everything began when the farmer repeatedly discovered that a few chickens had disappeared in the early morning. The coop door was still closed, the fence showed no signs of damage, and there were no large footprints on the ground. However, in the back corner of the coop, there was a patch of soft soil that had been lightly disturbed, along with a few feathers caught on the low wire fence. These subtle traces suggested that an animal had repeatedly crawled close to the ground to reach the area. After inspecting the entire farm, the wildlife control team suspected that a fox was exploiting a gap beneath the fence. Motion-activated cameras were installed near the trail behind the farm. On the first night, the footage captured a red fox emerging from the bushes. Instead of heading straight toward the coop, it stopped at the edge of the grass, lifted its head to check its surroundings, and then slowly walked along the fence. The fox repeatedly lowered its head to sniff the ground before disappearing at the exact spot where a narrow path led toward the field. Subsequent recordings showed that it consistently returned along nearly the same route. It appeared only after the farm had fallen quiet, passed a large tree, followed the low vegetation, and stopped behind the chicken coop. On some nights, it simply observed the area for a few minutes before leaving. On others, it approached the fence and tested the soil beneath it by digging. Such patience showed that the fox was carefully assessing every small change before deciding to make a full entry. The wildlife control team did not set a trap immediately. Instead, they continued monitoring the area to determine the fox's exact travel route and the spots where it usually stepped. After several days, they selected a narrow section of trail between two bushes. This was the point the fox had to pass through if it wanted to reach the rear of the coop. A properly sized steel foothold trap was discreetly placed there, while the surrounding area was left looking as close to its original condition as possible to avoid raising the animal's suspicion. Concealing the trap required exceptional care. The soil on the trail was restored to its natural appearance. Nearby branches were disturbed as little as possible, and the wildlife control team minimized leaving behind unfamiliar scents. With its highly sensitive sense of smell, a fox can detect unusual signs that humans would never notice. For that reason, once everything was in place, no one walked near the area again. The cameras were used to monitor the site remotely, minimizing any changes that might cause the fox to switch to a different route. During the first 2 nights, the fox appeared but never stepped into the prepared location. It stood several meters away, repeatedly sniffing the air before circling around the bushes. The following night, it came closer but still paused for a long time before leaving. The wildlife control team decided not to alter their plan, knowing that any intervention at that stage could undo everything they had learned through days of observation. They understood that facing a fox was never a matter of impatience. On the morning of the 5th day, the cameras detected prolonged movement along the trail. When the wildlife control team arrived to inspect the site, the fox had finally been caught in the steel foothold trap after several nights of caution. It was promptly handled according to appropriate wildlife control procedures, avoiding any unnecessary prolonging of the situation. The trap was then removed, and the entire farm was inspected once more to determine what had attracted the animal in the first place. The gap beneath the fence was sealed, the old wire mesh was replaced, and leftover feed around the coop was cleaned up every day. Motion sensor lights and cameras remained in operation to detect other animals as early as possible. The fox trapping operation ended successfully, but the most important lesson was not the steel foothold trap itself. It was the ability to read subtle signs, understand the animal's habits, and patiently wait for the right moment that enabled the farmer to protect the poultry flock from an intelligent and cautious predator.
Ah, dankjewel.
On many poultry farms, threats do not always appear with loud noises or clearly visible signs of serious damage. Everything often begins quietly, with a few chickens disappearing mysteriously during the night. At first, the farmer may assume they wandered away or that it was only an isolated incident. However, when a number of birds keeps falling while the coop, doors, and fence remain completely intact, it becomes clear that this is no coincidence. What confuses the farmer most is the almost complete absence of tracks around the area. There is no disturbed soil, no holes beneath the fence, and no footprints leading toward the coop. The animal seems to know how to approach without noticeably disturbing its surroundings. After several nights, the farmer realizes he is dealing with a cautious, highly observant predator already familiar with the farm that's identify the culprit. Infrared cameras are installed around the chicken coop, along nearby paths, and in areas frequently used by wild animals. After a few nights, the cameras capture a red fox slowly emerging from the darkness. It does not head directly toward the coop, but repeatedly stops to watch, sniff, and listen. Only when everything seems completely quiet does it continue approaching. The footage shows that the fox does not move around randomly at any point. It appears at nearly the same time, follows a narrow path, and uses thick bushes for cover. It seems to remember the exact locations of the fence, the enclosures, and the least monitored areas. Its adaptability makes it a difficult predator to control in rural areas. It is not the strongest, but it remains extremely patient when searching for food.
Liegt's draußen? Ja, das am Zaun liegt.
When it finds a reliable and easily accessible food source, the fox returns several times instead of searching for another target. Each successful visit helps it learn the human routine, when the dogs usually rest and where the coop is weakest. Because the birds disappear only one at a time, the losses often go unnoticed. When the farmer discovers the cause, fewer chickens remain, while the fox already knows the terrain and avoids dangerous areas. After several days of careful monitoring, the farmer identifies the fox's usual route and the time it normally appears. Instead of setting many traps, he chooses a narrow passage the animal must cross to reach the coop. A steel trap is carefully concealed beneath soil, dry grass, and fallen leaves. Bait is placed nearby, while the surrounding area is kept natural to avoid suspicion.
Now we're going to cover this trap. Normally, this has scratches on the side.
The plan's effectiveness does not depend on the number of traps, but on choosing the right location and exact timing.
Cleared.
One trap placed along the correct route can be far more effective than several positioned without planning. However, foxes quickly notice even small environmental changes. After a few nights, the cameras show the animal stopping at a distance, observing the area, and choosing another route to avoid the trap. In response, the farmer continues using the cameras to carefully study the fox's changing behavior. He soon identifies another route behind the fence that the animal now uses more frequently. The trap is moved to a crossing along this path, while the soil and leaves are carefully rearranged to hide any unusual signs. A small amount of fresh bait is also added, enough to attract the fox without increasing its suspicion. Adjusting the trap according to the animal's actual behavior allows the plan to remain effective as the fox becomes increasingly cautious. After several nights, the cameras stop recording any activity near the chicken coop. Even so, the farmer continues inspecting the property, reinforces the fence, closes the doors securely, and removes food that could attract wildlife. By making access more difficult, the farm also becomes less attractive to other nearby predators. Protecting poultry does not end after controlling one fox, since another animal may soon occupy the empty territory. A lasting solution must therefore combine regular monitoring, prevention, and a clear understanding of wildlife behavior. Only by remaining alert throughout the entire year can farmers reduce losses and maintain balance with the surrounding environment. If you found this story useful, leave a comment and subscribe to the channel for more upcoming content.
Because it was skunk. However...
Nou, dankjewel. Gewoon naar